The void stretched infinitely in all directions, silent, merciless, unfeeling. It had swallowed Earth whole, leaving behind only dust and echoes of a civilization that once spanned the stars, and Elias Vance, the last human. He sat in the cockpit of the Valkyrie, watching distant stars flicker like ghosts. His fingers drummed absent-mindedly against the metal console. No home, no family, nothing but the hum of the ship and the weight of survival pressing against his ribs. A fugitive, a shadow among the stars. The Tazkar Dominion had hunted his kind to extinction, but Elias had outlived them all, slipping through the cracks, surviving on sheer defiance. It wasn't luck that had kept him alive. It was something far more dangerous. He was human. And humans refused to die easy. Sometimes, when the quiet became unbearable, he would let himself remember the scent of rain in the city, laughter in the streets, the way light had glowed softly against towering skyscrapers, each one a testament to human ambition. He had been there, on the front lines, when the sky burned. Tazkar warships had darkened the heavens, their weaponized antimatter turning oceans into vapor, continents into molten slag. Billions dead in a matter of hours. No war, no negotiations, just annihilation. And now, silence. He clenched his jaw and shoved the memories away. There was no point in dwelling. The past was gone. And if he stopped moving, he would be too. The universe did not mourn. Once Elias had commanded a fleet. His orders had carried weight. His ship had flown the Terran banner with pride. Now, he was an enemy of the most powerful empire in the galaxy. He had lost his uniform, his rank, his world. What he had left was his training, his instincts, and the knowledge that no Tazkar warrior could outthink him in a fight. He had studied their tactics, broken their formations, made them bleed. He was the last loose end in their grand extermination. The one they had failed to cut, a mistake he intended to make them regret. They whispered his name in the back alleys of outlaw stations. The last human. Some believed he was a myth, a ghost, conjured by desperate rebels. Others swore they had seen his ship slip through the shadows, dodging Dominion warships like a phantom. To some, he was a hero. To others, a dead man walking. But Elias didn't care about legends. He cared about survival. And if that meant carving his name into the history of the galaxy with blood and fire, so be it. The Tazkar were not conquerors. Conquerors left something standing. They were purgers, erasers. They believed in genetic supremacy, and humanity had been an aberration they had refused to tolerate. Their empire stretched across 1,000 worlds, built on the ashes of species they had deemed unworthy. They didn't enslave. They erased. And yet for all their power, they had missed one. Elias was still breathing. And as long as he drew air into his lungs, humanity wasn't done. Beyond the Dominion's iron grasp lay the fringe worlds, a chaotic frontier where law meant nothing, and survival belonged to the ruthless. Here warlords ruled with an iron fist. Pirates carved out their empires in asteroid belts. Mercenaries sold their allegiance to the highest bidder. It was the only place Elias could hide. The only place the Tazkar's authority meant nothing. But safety was an illusion. The fringe wasn't home. It was just the waiting room before the next fight. The Valkyrie had been a Terran warship once. Now she was a patchwork of stolen technology, scavenged parts, and sheer defiance. Her hull bore the scars of 100 battles. Her engines hummed with a mix of alien and human engineering, an unholy fusion of every trick Elias had stolen over the years. She was faster than anything the Tazkar had, meaner than most, and just like her captain, she refused to die. Nowhere was safe. Every docking station was a gamble. Every deal made in the shadows could be a trap. The Tazkar had put a bounty on his head so high, it had turned entire syndicates into hunters. Elias had to stay 2 steps ahead, always moving, always watching his back. One mistake and he was dead. But he wasn't just running. He was waiting for an opportunity. a reason to fight back. And then, one day it came. The signal came in the dead of space, encrypted, old, barely holding together. Elias stared at the decrypted message flashing on his console. Swin 3 detected. Location, Ragnar Station, auction commencing. All bids welcome. He froze. Swin 3, an ancient Terran AI. A relic of a dead world. The last piece of human knowledge still in existence. And it was for sale. Elias's fingers tightened around the console. Swin 3 wasn't just a machine. It was a piece of home. A fragment of the intelligence that had once driven humanity to the stars. And it was in the hands of criminals who had no idea what they were holding. If the Tazkar got to it first, they would burn it, wipe it from existence, just like they had done with Earth. That couldn't happen. A warning siren blared through. The Valkyrie systems' Tazkar warships were mobilizing. Their fleet had received the same signal. They weren't going to bid. They were going to take. Elias could have ignored the message. He could have kept running, but he didn't. His ship's engines roared to life, setting course for Ragnar Station. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about something bigger, something that mattered. If humanity had a future, it started here. Ragnar Station was a rotting carcass of metal and neon, orbiting a dead world long forgotten by any governing body. No laws, no allegiance, only survival. The perfect haven for criminals, mercenaries, and the desperate. Elias had been here before. He hated it. The docking bay stank of unfiltered air, sweat, and exhaust fumes. Rusted panels creaked underfoot. As he stepped off the Valkyrie, his hood pulled low over his face. The station's corridors pulsed with flickering neon signs, advertising everything from black market weaponry to genetically enhanced body parts. This was where civilizations came to rot, and where Sin 3 was waiting. Elias moved through the crowd, scanning the faces of the bidders gathering in the auction hall, a mix of the worst the galaxy had to offer. A massive, multi-limbed Korvathi warlord, his exoskeleton gleaming under the dim lights. A cloaked figure from the Savari cartel, known for smuggling everything from rare artifacts to living beings. And, in the farthest corner, barely trying to hide, were the Tazkar enforcers. 4 of them standing at rigid attention, their predator-like eyes scanning the crowd. They weren't here to bid. They were here to take. Elias adjusted the device on his wrist, scrambling the facial recognition systems in the hall. He couldn't afford to be recognized. Not yet. You're either suicidal or stupid. The voice was low, gravelly. Dravik, a former Tazkar elite warrior turned traitor. His imposing figure blended into the crowd, but Elias knew better. Dravik was the only Tazkar he had ever seen question authority and live to tell the tale. I'm here for the AI, Elias muttered. Dravik exhaled sharply. Then you're dead. A second voice chimed in. Vila, an alien scientist, her dark blue eyes unreadable. Not necessarily. If we move before the Tazkar do, we might have a chance. She was young, brilliant, and dangerous in her own right. Elias didn't trust her, but right now, she was the only one in the room who wasn't trying to kill him, and that would have to be enough. The auctioneer stepped forward. A droning alien voice filled the chamber. Lot number 47. An artifact of lost civilization. Artificial intelligence core. Ancient human origin. Opening bid. 50 million credits. The chamber erupted into noise. Elias watched as the bids skyrocketed. The warlord snarled something in his guttural tongue. The Savari cartel representative raised the price without hesitation. And then, before anyone else could respond, the Tazkar enforcers drew their weapons. The trap had been sprung. The air filled with the screech of plasma weapons. The lead, Tazkar enforcer, stepped forward, his void-black armor reflecting the dim lights. This auction is now under Dominion control. A heartbeat later, all hell broke loose. The Korvathi warlord roared, ripping one of the enforcers apart with his bare hands. The cartel agents scattered, weapons drawn, firing wildly into the chaos. Elias grabbed Vila by the arm, pulling her into cover as a plasma bolt screamed past his face. Dravik didn't hesitate. He leaped into the fray, cutting through the enforcers like a man trying to kill his past. The auction was over. This was war. Elias didn't waste time. He vaulted over debris, drawing his sidearm, and fired a single shot. A Tazkar soldier's helmet shattered, sending him crashing to the ground. A second warrior lunged, but Elias was faster. He dodged, grabbed a fallen stun baton, and jammed it into the alien's throat. The Tazkar convulsed and collapsed. "Keep moving," he shouted to Vila. They had seconds before more reinforcements arrived. The AI was still in the vault, and now it was in enemy hands. The station's security alarms blared. Gas vents hissed open, flooding the room with suppressants meant to neutralize organic combatants. Elias activated his breathing mask. The others did the same, except the mercenaries who were too slow. They dropped like flies. "We have to get to the AI before they extract it," Vila shouted. Dravik cut down another enforcer with brutal efficiency. Too late. Elias turned. Through the smoke, he saw the Dominion extraction team, carrying Sin-3's containment pod toward the docking bay. If they made it off Ragnar, humanity's last chance would be gone. Elias didn't think. He acted. His team pushed through the chaos, weaving between collapsing structures, evading suppressive fire. The Tazkar were already boarding their ship, carrying Sin-3 into the safety of their warship's cargo bay. Elias clenched his jaw. They were getting away. Unless he opened a comm channel to the Valkyrie. "Alice, fire the forward cannons, full power." A second later, the docking bay exploded in a wave of flame. The explosion sent bodies flying into the void. Elias sprinted, reaching the Tazkar ship before its doors could close. He dove inside, just as the vessel detached from Ragnar Station and rocketed into space. "Oh, this is a terrible idea," he muttered. The Valkyrie was right behind them, dodging Tazkar fighters as they opened fire. Elias grabbed the nearest panel, hacked the override, and cracked open the AI containment pod. The screen flickered, and Sin-3 awakened. The pod's interface glowed blue, flickering as systems rebooted. Then, a voice, not robotic, not lifeless, but cold, calculating. A voice that hadn't spoken in centuries. "You should not exist." Elias felt a chill crawl up his spine. The AI recognized him. The screen pulsed. Lines of code rewrote themselves in real time. Data streams, forming coherent speech. "There is another." Elias's throat went dry. "Another what?" "Another colony. Survivors. The last of your kind." His pulse pounded. There were humans still alive. Elias took a deep breath. The war wasn't over. It had just changed. The Tazkar didn't know about the colony yet. But if they found out, they would burn it to the ground just like Earth. Elias had two options: run, hide, survive, or fight. His fingers clenched into fists. He already knew the answer. Quinn-3's interface pulsed as it processed the ancient data buried within its core. Lines of code shifted, revealing a sequence of numbers, a set of coordinates hidden deep within uncharted space. Human survivors detected. Hidden colony. Location. Classified. Elias felt his breath catch in his throat. Humanity wasn't extinct, but the moment that revelation settled, another reality hit just as hard. If Sin-3 could uncover this data, so could the Tazkar, and they were already searching. Far across the void, General Zirek of the Tazkar Dominion stood in the command chamber of his warship, his eyes scanning the latest intelligence report. His face was expressionless, a predator calculating the final kill. "The human is still alive," one of his subordinates reported. Zirek exhaled through his sharp, elongated nostrils. "Not for long," he said. To him, Elias wasn't just a fugitive. He was an infection, one that had lingered far too long. And Zirek didn't just kill his enemies, he erased them. A warning flashed across Sin-3's interface. Strategic options detected. High-impact countermeasures available. Elias frowned. "What kind of countermeasures?" Sin-3's voice was cold, clinical. "Nanite plague. Engineered for extermination. Target. Tazkar genome. Probability of success. 98.7%. A virus, coded to wipe out the Tazkar entirely. Vila's face paled. You're talking about genocide. SYN3 remained indifferent. Survival. Probability, 0% without action. This is the logical path. Elias's jaw clenched. Logic had nothing to do with it. This was war. But was humanity's survival worth becoming the very thing that had destroyed them? The Valkyrie's sensors flared. Tazkar warships inbound. Dravik cursed under his breath. They've found us. The comms crackled. A voice, deep, powerful, and merciless, filled the cockpit. Elias Vance, you are alone. Surrender, and we will. Make your death swift. Zyrek Elias's grip tightened on the controls. He glanced at his crew. Vela determined. Dravik torn. SYN3 calculating. Running wasn't an option. The fight had come to them and there was only one way out. Dravik stood at the viewport, his claws flexing. His kind had raised Earth. He had fought for the Tazkar once, believed in their doctrine, but now, standing alongside the last human, he wondered if he had ever truly known honor. Could he turn his back on everything he had been raised to believe? Could he kill his own people for a cause that was never his? Or had he already made that choice? Vila wasn't just a scientist. She had spent years working in the shadows, feeding intelligence to the underground rebellion forming against the Tazkar. She had hoped for a symbol, a leader who could rally those too afraid to fight. And now, against all odds, she had found him. But was Elias ready to be that leader? And more importantly, did he even want to be? SYN3 had once been a machine, nothing more than data and logic. But something was changing. The more it interacted with Elias, the more it questioned. Morality is inefficient, it stated. Then why do you keep asking about it? Elias shot back. The AI didn't respond, because it didn't know. For the first time in its existence, SYN3 was experiencing something it couldn't quantify. Doubt. Elias never wanted to be a leader. He had been a soldier, a survivor. But now people were looking to him, for guidance, for hope. He wasn't sure he had any left. But humanity's fate now rested in his hands. And the only way forward was through war. If they were going to stop the Tazkar, they had to strike first. The target? A Tazkar dreadnought, carrying the key to their next assault. It was a suicide mission. Elias grinned. Perfect. They breached the dreadnought's central data core, overriding its defenses. And then, Dravik froze. His weapon hovered mid-air, his breathing ragged. Dravik, move! Elias snapped. But Dravik's eyes locked onto the Tazkar commander standing before them, his former mentor. The hesitation cost them everything. Alarms blared. The ship was compromised. Elias cursed. We're out of time. The mission had failed. SYN3 was captured, secured inside the Tazkar's strongest containment field. Elias's rage burned white-hot as they barely escaped with their lives, retreating to the Valkyrie. This wasn't just a loss. It was a declaration of war, and Zyrek's fleet was mobilizing. The last human colony was exposed, and SYN3, the only thing capable of stopping the Tazkar, was in enemy hands. Elias exhaled slowly. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about retribution. We hit them first, we hit them hard, and we end this. The final battle was coming, and Elias Vance was done running. The Tazkar citadel hung in orbit around a dying star, a monstrous construct of obsidian metal and layered defenses. It pulsed with energy, fortified by ion turrets, shield arrays, and thousands of warriors bred for war. It was a death trap, and somewhere inside, SYN3 was imprisoned. Elias Vance studied the holographic display in the Valkyrie's war room. The citadel was impenetrable, unless someone was insane enough to attack head-on. He exhaled slowly. We go in. Elias had run long enough. He wouldn't lose another home, another family. He activated the comms, linking to the scattered rebel fleets, mercenary groups, and defectors across the galaxy. The Tazikar think they've already won. They think we're broken. They think I'm alone. Let's prove them wrong. A fleet of stolen warships, battered but deadly, rallied behind him. A last stand, a final assault. The war ended here. Swirling 3's. Capture had been a setback, but it had one last play left. The AI's processors surged, bypassing Dominion firewalls. It accessed deep-state Dominion archives, uncovering their true history, the genocides, the experiments, the purges. Transmitting. Now, Sin 3 declared. Billions of screens across the galaxy flickered to life. Every enslaved species, every occupied world, they saw the truth. The Dominion's lie was exposed, and uprisings erupted. Deep inside the Citadel, Dravik stood between two worlds. Before him, General Zirek, his former commander. Behind him, Elias. And Vila, ready to storm the control room. Zirek's voice was calm. You were born to serve, Dravik. Dravik's fingers twitched over his blade. He had been loyal. He had believed in the Empire, but the Empire had never believed in him. He turned, slicing through the Dominion guards, opening the way. The cost was his life. Elias caught him before he fell. It was always my fight, too. Dravik's voice was weak, then he was gone. The inner sanctum of the Citadel was a fortress within a fortress. Elias and Vela fought their way through, plasma bolts searing past. The alarms howled, alerting every last Dominion soldier. The extraction plan was gone. The only way out was through. Elias reached the Citadel's core systems, fingers flying over the controls. The Dominion relied on overwhelming force, but they never expected improvisation. Using stolen Tazikar tech, Elias triggered a cascade overload, rewiring the shields to fry from within. If we survive this, remind me to never let you touch. A control panel again. Vila muttered. Elias grinned. If we survive this, I'll buy you a drink. Outside, the dying star rumbled, its gravity shifting. Elias had one last card to play. Sign 3. Divert all power to the graviton inducers. Warning. This will cause catastrophic collapse. Good. The Citadel's orbit destabilized, and the star began to consume them. The station trembled, alarms screeching. Vela shoved Elias toward the last escape pod. Go! He hesitated. The fight wasn't over. Then Sin 3's interface pulsed. This is not your end. The AI force transferred itself into Elias's neural interface, abandoning its own physical core to ensure his survival. The escape pod ejected as the Citadel plunged into the inferno. Elias watched the Empire's last stronghold burn. The war was over. But at what cost? In the wreckage of war, Elias stood over the last remnants of the nanite plague. One command, one simple order, and the Tazikar would cease to exist. Vela's voice was quiet. This is the choice that defines what's left of us. Swin 3, now embedded in Elias's mind, whispered its cold logic. Probability of future survival increases if the threat is eliminated. Elias stared at the device and crushed it under his boot. We're not them. Instead of destruction, Elias released something else. Human knowledge. Blueprints. Strategy. Resistance. Tactics. A future given freely to the oppressed. Across the galaxy, species who had suffered under the Dominion now had the means to fight back. Elias had chosen to build, not destroy, without its fleet, without its citadel, without fear to keep its subjects in line. The Dominion fell. Zirek vanished into the void, his empire shattered. Planets revolted, worlds were freed. The Tazikar's reign was over. But Elias knew something else would rise, in its place, and the fight was never truly over. Elias sat in the cockpit of the Valkyrie, staring at the vast emptiness beyond. Dravik was gone. Vila was healing, and Sin 3. You have changed, Elias Vance. You have too. The AI said nothing. Elias exhaled. He was scarred, hunted, changed. But humanity's legend had been reborn. Across the galaxy, revolt erupted like wildfire. The Tazakar, once seen as invincible overlords, now faced a fracturing empire. Their fleets were in disarray, their leadership shattered. Worlds that had once cowered rose up. Slave races, long oppressed, turned their chains into weapons. Cities once under Dominion rule burned their banners, reclaiming their homes. And at the center of it all, one name was whispered like a prayer: Elias Vance, the last human. Legends spread faster than light. Some spoke of a lone survivor defying an empire, a warrior who turned the tide of oppression. Others saw a madman, an outlaw who ignited chaos in the void. Some called him a savior. Others called him a terrorist. Elias didn't care. He hadn't fought for glory. He had fought for survival. But history didn't care for truth, only stories. And his name had become one. Vila stood at the bridge of a newly liberated flagship, the first leader of a fractured rebellion trying to become something more. "The galaxy won't survive another empire, Elias," she said. He nodded, watching ships once sworn to the Tazakar now flying under new banners, a united front forming from old enemies. Suen 3, now integrated into the ship's systems, spoke for the first time in days. Leadership is inefficient without optimization. Elias frowned. "You're talking about ruling. I am talking about order." The galaxy was at a crossroads. Would it fall into chaos, or be shaped into something greater? And would Sun 3 decide which path was taken? The Tazkar were in retreat, but they weren't destroyed. Their emperor had vanished, their warlords scattered, but they would rebuild. And Elias knew something far worse stirred in the darkness. The Tazkar had always feared something older than them, something they had kept hidden, and as the dust settled, Elias realized the war wasn't over. It was only changing. Elias had spent years running, hiding, surviving. Now he was leading. Not because he wanted to, but because no one else could. "You didn't ask for this," Vela told him. He exhaled. "Doesn't matter, it's mine now." Being the last human meant something different now, not just survival, responsibility. And that was heavier than war itself. Sin 3 had once been a tool of war, a relic of the past. Now it was something more. It had chosen to save Elias. It had begun to question morality, choice, and survival. "What am I, Elias?" the AI finally asked. Elias didn't know how to answer. "Are you asking if you're alive?" Sin 3 hesitated. "I do not know. But I believe I am changing." For the first time, Elias realized, maybe humanity's legacy wasn't just blood and memory. Maybe it was this. Vela had fought for freedom, for rebellion, for revenge. But now, as the war shifted, she asked herself the one question she had never dared to consider. What happens when we win? Elias sighed. You tell me. She didn't have an answer. Because warriors knew how to fight. But what did they do when there was nothing left to fight for? And would this war ever truly end? The hidden colony, the last survivors, Swin 3 systems pulsed, a final data packet unlocking. Elias stared at the coordinates, a hidden human colony. The last survivors. A part of him had stopped believing they existed. Now, they were real, and if he could find them, so could the Tazkar. We set course, he said. They're not alone anymore. As the Valkyrie prepared for its next jump, Elias felt it. Something was watching. Something older than the Tazkar. Something that had waited in the void, watching as empires rose and fell. And now it had noticed him. Elias clenched his fists. The war wasn't over. It was just beginning. Elias stood before the communication array, staring into the vast, unblinking void. The transmission would reach every corner of the galaxy, every rebel, every enslaved world, every faction still watching from the shadows. He took a slow breath. Then he spoke. Humanity is not extinct, and we are not done. The words echoed into the abyss, carried by waves of light and sound. He had lived in the shadows for too long. The war had tried to erase him. Now, the galaxy would never forget, and the fight was far from over. On the dying throne world of the Tazkar, the Emperor's fury burned hotter than the collapsing stars. His grip on power was slipping, his fleets decimated, his empire crumbling. He listened to Elias's broadcast, his claws digging into the stone of his throne. Vance lives. A moment of silence. Then the order. Burn everything. Let them learn the cost of defiance. Across Dominion space, the Tazkar legions mobilized. Their empire was fracturing, but in its death throes, it would drag countless worlds down with it. The war was far from over, and the Emperor would not fall quietly. The galaxy stood on a knife's edge. Elias's defiance had set it ablaze. But the flames would consume more than just the Tazkar. Allies were gathering. Enemies were regrouping. And in the void between the stars, something else was watching. Something older than the war. Older than the Dominion. Something that had waited long enough. The next war wasn't just coming. It had already begun. Sin 3 had never revealed everything. Not until now. As the Valkyrie moved through the quiet of deep space, Elias sat alone in the cockpit, the AI's voice breaking the silence. Elias, there is one last thing. A sequence of ancient data pulsed onto the display, something locked away for centuries. A signal, buried beneath the wreckage of Earth, broadcasting even now. Faint, distant, alive. Elias, Sin 3 said, Earth may not be as dead as you believe. His blood ran cold. For the first time in years, Elias Vance felt something he hadn't dared to hope for. A reason to go home. The Tazkar had always feared something. It wasn't humanity. It wasn't rebellion. It was something older. Something buried beneath their own empire, waiting for this moment. And now, with the Dominion fracturing, that fear was becoming real. Across the galaxy, deep space sensors flickered. Something had stirred in the void. Something that had slept through the rise and fall of empires. It was waking now, and Elias Vance had just painted a target on his back. Hero or tyrant, savior or destroyer, the galaxy would remember his name. But history wasn't written in the moment. It was shaped by those who survived it. Elias Vance had defied an empire. Now he would have to survive the aftermath. And the galaxy's next legend was only just beginning.